Over 7 million different animals inhabit our planet.
The bongo has this pattern of like a darker nose, and then it gets grabbed.
What can they teach us?
Yeah, it's out of all the animals you worked with, the gorillas, the cats, everything, the bongo has just blown away.
Many species are in crisis and need your help. Join the movement at allcreaturespod.com.
Welcome to All Creatures Podcast. This is Chris.
And I'm Angie.
Hoof and horns. It's perfect.
Hoofs and
Boom, boom.
horns. Yes, I love antlers too, but today it's hoof and horn, talking about the bongo. Bingo, bango, bongo.
Yeah,
Yes.
Binga Binga Bongo in the Congo. I mean, all of that stuff. So
I love it. Did you just make that up? That was amazing.
I did.
Wow.
From the Congo, the bongo.
Man,
Yeah, no.
you must have had your coffee this morning. That's incredible. I remember.
I did.
Yeah.
I did have coffee. So I'm a little pumped for this one. And, we had a week off. So, it's hard when you skip a week because I just feel antsy. Like, I just want to make sure we do an episode a week to keep going. So we just caught our breath. We're going to hit it hard. We've got next month some big species coming in October.
Yes, it's going to be fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, it's good just to kick back off with a hoof and horns, and one of Angie's been bugging for a while to do this one.
Yes, it's the bongo. They're the largest and most colorful forest African antelope. So they've got all the bells and whistles. They've got the looks, they've got the horns, they've got the size, they have the personality, which is something I've heard about. And so I personally, unfortunately, have never worked with bongos. I've worked with a lot of different antelope and deer species, but I think I really missed the boat by not being up close and personal with bongos, because I've just heard for people that work hoof stock and have the delights of seeing these guys every day that they are a lot of fun, and they're almost like big cows. And with that being said, John, my husband, his favorite animal of all time, and he's been doing this for working with animals for, I won't even say because I don't want to give his age away. More than a couple, more than a couple years.
Yeah.
And so, and Ariel, that was her name, is just his favorite. And he's worked with great apes, big cats, hoof stock, birds, reptiles, pandas.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it really holds a lot of weight in my brain and my mind. And so now that he's at the Santa Fe College Teaching Zoo, they're looking to get more hoof stock because they have really nice yards. And I keep begging him for 10 years to please get bongo so I can learn more, live vicariously and go there and just watch them. And while he's actually working, I'll just go watch them with the kids. But he won't do it. And so I want to make a hashtag, hashtag Santa Fe College Teaching Zoo, get a bongo, or bingo, bango, bongo, Congo. I don't know. Something.
Yeah.
But don't tell him that. This is now public. So, but I've just been drawn to them. When you look, I've never seen them in Africa because I haven't been to that area of Africa. And as we learned, they're forest animals. They hide more, but their color is beautiful. And Chris, you know me, I love horns. Their horns are beautiful, and both males and females have them, which is pretty unique for this genre family of antelope, which I'm sure you'll talk about in evolution. So, and what I learned, and I didn't know this, is one of the subspecies, the eastern or mountain bongo, is arguably one of the most threatened mammals in Africa. Really low numbers, 140 or something like that with the last count.
You're right, Angie. And they're in Florida near us, and we're going to talk a little bit about it here a little bit later. One of our favorite places, a conservation center there that we did a little bit of work at and got to visit, was working with these critically endangered eastern bongo. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that for sure, because, just a huge, important herbivore in Africa. And one that, just like you said, people are just wowed when you see it. I mean, just
they're
amazing.
Striking. They're a cross between, their color patterns they've got the stripes basically run from their shoulders all the way back. But yes, Chris, they're just so unique. their coat pattern. I mean, I'm a sucker for a good looking animal. And this one just has all the bells and whistles. The bongo, their coat color is very beautiful, brown, orange, red tone, auburn tones in it. And what really makes them just super striking is that throughout their coat pattern, starting at about their shoulder blades, they have thin white stripes that run all the way around in a circle, like if you were like cutting them in half. And then, unlike a zebra stripes or the stripes of an okapi, kind of like on its legs, the stripes aren't really close together. There's a couple inches between each stripe, and then another one by its withers, and then another one behind its shoulder blades, and then through another one through its barrel, and then all the way on down to its rear end. And it just is just really unique. Like, and of course, it's probably for camouflage in the dense jungles and things like that. But it's just so cool. And then the stripe patterns, they also have one kind, a white stripe underneath their neck and kind of where their breast or their chest is. And then their underside is a lighter color and the inside of their legs. And then they have a really adorable face because they have the typical antelope
Hoof
face.
stock.
Or if you
Yeah,
think,
hoof
if you
stock. Yeah.
hoof stock, if you think of a gazelle with a long, narrow nose and big ears
Huge
with a little
ears.
bit,
Yep.
a little bit of fluff in there just to help protect them from flies. But then across their nose, I'd almost call it like a nose band in the horse world, they have another white or yellow cream colored like stripe that is just stunning and makes their face super unique in the antelope world.
Oh yeah, I mean even their ears. When I was looking at their ears, I was like, oh, that's almost like the African painted dogs. You know, the ear coloring, just
Very good.
yeah, you know, the
Yeah.
various coloring, and just again helps them with camouflage.
And depending on the subspecies, their faces are darker. Some almost have like more of a black face, and then it's like a fade of, I'm not a really good color. I'm painting walls and I'm learning that I'm not. My color palette, interior design is like, I
Yes,
don't have
yes.
a bone in my body that's good at that. And
Yeah.
so everybody's like, oh, well, this is, of course, my dear friend Anna's like, you need warm tones to match warm tones and
You're like, what?
cool tone. I'm like, can you just show me,
Yes.
But the bongo has this pattern of like a darker nose, and then it gets gradually lighter as it moves into their head and then sometimes down their neck. And then, of course, they have a very unique, not really a dorsal stripe like we see in some of the horses and things like that, but they have dorsal hair that sticks up.
Yeah.
It's like they have a little roached mane that runs from like their withers or where their shoulder blades meet across their whole back. It's like a little teeny tiny mohawk, which is just
It's cute. It's
adorable,
really cute.
right?
Yeah, it's really cute. It's really cute. And just, size wise, so Angie said they're enormous. And I guess we can talk more when we get to behavior too. Being a forest antelope, you wouldn't think these big ones would move around as much. But anyways, up to 4.5 feet or 1.3 meters at the shoulder, over 10 feet long. Like,
right.
That's huge. That's
why
big.
people, the keepers say they're almost like big cows to work with. Yeah.
They're big. They're big. Females can weigh over 500 pounds or 235, 240 kilograms. Males, almost 1,000 pounds or 400 to.
Oh, that's how I like them.
Kilograms.
Big and round.
Big.
Yes.
The
yes.
boys are big. And then obviously the favorite is the horns. And I'm just going to let you do you want to describe the horns? Or I can. I mean, the size of the horns, the size can be 30 to 40 inches long or up to 100 centimeters long. Yeah, but that's the horns are Angie's. That's Angie's domain.
I know. I just love them. I love them so much. Well, they're in the spiral horned antelope family. And so when you think of spiraled horn, I've been blessed a few times to see kudu, the greater kudu in Africa, which that's spiral like DNA. I mean, spiral. But these ones are not as circular in their spiral, but they definitely have a twist to them where they kind of twist outward towards their ears and then roll inward towards each other. That was a horrible description. I apologize. But hopefully by now you've pulled up an image or been curious about how beautiful they are, because I'm not doing it justice. They're just really good looking horns. If you know anything about horns, I love them all though. I shouldn't. Everywhere from the oryx to the takin. But the cool thing, like I said too, is that the females have them as well, and they're usually not quite as large and thick, but they definitely still have them, which is, once again, you don't see that in a lot of antelope species. The sable antelope, which we've covered, the females have them as well. But there is, of course, but just as Chris mentioned, there is a little bit of that sexual dimorphism as far as males being overall bigger than females, and that is also seen in their horns as well.
Right. Now, before we run off and describe the range, we got so excited. Angie jumped right into the description. We got to say thank you to a couple people for Patreon this month. So, which is fine. I can tell Angie always, whenever we do Hoof and Horns, it's an exciting podcast. So real quick, I have to say a big thank you to Chelsea S and Var D for joining Patreon this month. So thank you very much. I have to say, Organization of the Month, we were going to do 2. So Coral Restoration Foundation definitely was overwhelming. Everybody voted on that. So we sent money to them.
Yay!
And it was close. I still sent money to the Pacific Marine Mammal Center just because that was close to home. So I just did that on the side. But the Australian Marine Conservation Foundation came in second. So
they do a lot of good work. Yay!
Yeah. And also the Sloth Conservation Foundation came in at third, and I was like, and I'll just tell everybody, I'll be interviewing their director here in this coming up week. So she's down in Costa Rica. We've been emailing back and forth, and she's tracking sloths right now. So I get to interview her from the field. So anyways, but thank you. You're helping support conservation, and you're helping support our mission to educate as many people around the world on all these animals and conservation issues.
Yeah, like I always say too, if you don't have $1 to spare, I totally understand, especially now times are really hard, but you do have 10 seconds or 20 seconds to spare. And if you could give us a review on iTunes, that would be awesome. That helps get our numbers up there as far as how we're viewed and how frequently we're viewed. And big thanks this week to Chelsea Steele for giving us a warm, wonderful, amazing review, which I just loved reading. So thank you, Chelsea. And then your buddy, Mike Bona.
Thanks, Mike.
He came through for you. He gave us a glowing review, and he's a dear friend of ours. And we actually need to go visit him again or have him on the podcast again, maybe do a round table.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, down at LA Zoo. So, hey, Mike. Yeah, we've been going back and forth on
Love
Instagram.
You, buddy. Thank you.
Yeah, he loved the mandrill episode. So range, Angie. We talk about rainforest, dense forest, savanna forests. It made me think of, the forest elephants that we talked about, similar range. Congo, the Republic of Congo, Central African Republic, Southern Sudan, those areas. Then there's a break going out even further west into Africa where you get into Gabon, Ghana, Guinea, that region. Mm-hmm. So that's the one species we're going to talk about. And then
that's the lowland or western bongo, which makes sense because it's on the western part of Africa.
Right. Then we go to Kenya, and we have these critically endangered mountain or eastern bongo that we're going to talk a little bit about today too. So, but the highlands, right? The highlands of Kenya. You were in Tanzania, not Kenya, right?
Yes, I was supposed to go to Kenya to do a research project with grubby zebras. Lincoln Park Zoo was sending me, but there was some unrest there. This was probably about 10 years ago. There was some civil unrest there, and so we decided to scratch that plan. And I went into Tanzania, into Tarangire National Park, which is just beautiful, to look at do wildebeest counts, and which is really fun. Wildebeest have stripes on them. And with that project, it was neat. We would take photos of the animals when we were out all day long and sex them. And you would take a photo, aim for their head and shoulder blade area because they had really unique stripes. And just like zebras, each wildebeest has a distinct pattern. And so the software would try to either add a new individual to the count or see if it can match up with one that's already been counted. So it was a really fun trip, but I did miss out on going into Kenya, which is definitely on my bucket list because I need to go, because I'm dying to go to Lewa Conservancy, which is where the Grevies are. And I'm not sure if they have the mountain bongo, but it looks like it's pretty close by as far as if you already are that far over visiting in Kenya, just to maybe see if we can check out some mountain bongo. So
Yeah.
on the bucket list for sure.
I know, Angie. I'm always jealous of all your trips when you're a zookeeper. It's just amazing. It's amazing. And as a graduate student, when your wonderful professor sent you over, well, you weren't even a grad student. You did it. Never mind. You were graduated. You were my colleague, my podcast partner.
Yeah, I try to go. It just really fills me up.
I know.
I don't get to go as much as I used to when I was younger, as I have a lot more responsibilities these days. But yeah, pretty soon, hopefully, I'll be able to incorporate my kids into the travel. We'll see.
Yeah. You'll get there. All right. So, why care? I think, are we bringing in a special guest about why care?
Yes.
Do you have anything to say? I mean, I would say, looking at what scientists say about the ecological importance, from what I've read, it's hard because they're so not secretive. It's just hard to study them, right?
Sure. When we get to behavior, there's a few gaps in it, or we know a lot of it'll be like, oh, well, we know this from studying them under human care. But yes, what is known of them in the forest kind of reminded me of okapi, where there's some holes and some gaps as far as our knowledge of what they do, because they can be, and they're hiding in the forest and they're not super wanting us to see them. So, but in the zoo world, they're out and about and they have a ton of personality. And I can't speak for everybody else, but for me, I fell in love with a bongo just from hearing about what it was like to work with them. Yeah. So I think that's why we'll bring our special guest on, and we'll see if he can work his magic on all the public.
Yes, let's see. All right, so I want to welcome back John, our expert.
How's it going, buddy? Good to see you again. Good to hear from you again.
Yeah, it's been a few episodes since we've had you back on.
I'm always happy to contribute.
Yeah, no, but Angie, and I know for a while we've been talking about this episode, and you did mention it in the last one we had you on. I can't even remember what species we were covering. Yeah. But you were talking about the bongo, and I said, okay, we're gonna cover the bongo. It was like a few months back, and Angie was saying, out of all the animals, and I still can't believe panda's not your favorite. But yeah, it's out of all the animals you've worked with, the gorillas, the cats, the everything, the bongo has just blown you away. Yeah, hippos. I know hippos still your favorite. Yeah.
Still my favorite species, but individual animal and as a species, they're just incredible and fantastic. And there's a lot of unique features, which I know you guys are talking about, to this species, but I think some of it is they're so large, they are so dynamic looking. They've got this incredible rack on their head. The females have these spiraled horns, and the males have this humongous rack, and it's just incredible. They're so huge, and they really were one of the last large species to be discovered because they are so elusive and they're so great at doing what they're doing, which is hiding basically in the middle of a thick forest, but an enormous animal. So I love that about them, that they're this elusive kind of forest antelope. So a couple really great things that I personally just love about them, and I'll talk about my individual stories, but the bongo antelope really showed me how all these individual animals, regardless of what animal it is, has their own unique personality. And I don't mean as a species. As a species, they have certain things that make them unique. But as an individual, I really got to learn about these individual animals. And, everybody, of course, is captured by lions and tigers and polar bears and elephants, and we are as well. And it's easy to look at those animals and say, wow, they're amazing. But to work with this bongo antelope that is they are striking. I think their coloration is striking, their size. But to work with this antelope that most people disregard antelopes and see how incredible they are as individuals and how fun and interesting and personable they are, that's what really struck me. And that's what I love about working with animals and having had the opportunity to work with animals, is I get to really form individual relationships with these animals. And you guys, all the listeners out there, that's, I think, what you love about these animals too, is you understand that they are greater than the parts. They're greater than just being species. They are individuals out there in the world existing, and they have their personalities, and you can fall in love with those personalities. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So my stories about my favorite girl is Ariel. My favorite species, my favorite individual animal is Ariel. She's a Bongo antelope that I worked with for a number of years, and on a kind of a number of different reasons. And one of my first real introductions to her, you get a new species into a zoo, you have to quarantine them. So that means they have to be essentially apart from all the other individuals of the same species. So just in case they have something, a disease or something like that, they don't transfer it to the rest of the animals in that facility. And so she was quarantined, and it was great, and everything worked out. She's totally healthy. Everything's fine. But when we went to move her from the quarantine facility down to the barn where she actually was gonna hang out, we had to get her into a trailer. And these aren't like horses; they're not used to trailering up, and you just move them along. And like I said, she's big. She stands pretty close to 6 foot, like me. And I don't know, she was like 250 pounds or something like that. They're pretty big. They're beefy.
Yeah, they're big. Yeah.
So you can't just ask them to go in the trailer. We didn't have the time to do operant conditioning at the time, so I couldn't train her into the trailer. So myself and my coworker, Ken is bigger than me, taller than me. He's probably your size. He's like 6'2" or 6'4" or something. Huge guy. We go in there. We have herding boards. We have big plywood boards to move her into the trailer. And we go and we have the door open to the barn. The trailer's backed up to it. We're moving the boards, and she just wants to get, away from us, but she's just walking and strutting and not really like running. And she just walks towards the trailer. But we essentially get her to a point where Ken and I are standing directly next to each other with the boards, and we have her in a spot that is no bigger than probably a 4x4 spot for a humongous antelope. She can only do one thing. She can only go into the trailer. There's no place else to go, or so we thought. All she did was crouch down. So she, like a cat, she put her butt sort of towards the ground, and she literally jumped over Ken and I from a standing position, not a running position. So she got a 6-foot jump over our heads. And all she did, she behind us, she didn't stick the landing. She did roll, but she rolled onto a shoulder and then just stood up. And she was now behind us and just looking at us. And Ken and I looked at each other, and we took our boards and we got out of there real quick. And it just shows you that animals will surprise you, and they have amazing abilities, and they can use them if they want. And she has this incredible rack, and she certainly could have, she was behind us now. She could have just put it down and tried to, stick it through us. But she didn't. She just wanted to be away from us. Like, I'm not going in the trailer, so I'm just going to go over your head. So it was incredible. So we had to regroup, and we had to put on top of our herding boards, which were about 5-foot herding boards. We could look over them. We had to put on top of them a rigid plastic that made them about 12 to 14 feet tall, so that she then couldn't jump over those, and she had no choice but to go in the trailer. And that's what she did. We went in there with those, and she was like, "Oh, okay, I'll just go in the trailer." Game's over. Yeah. But it was just, and I think it was a game to her. It was, and that just really put me in awe about the species and the individual. And for her personally, she was so intelligent, and she was so funny, and she was just charming. And I know usually these are the characteristics I talk about Angie, but this is Ariel, and it is. Sometimes I think, and it's a good thing I didn't have to choose between Angie and Ariel, because it would have been a tight.
I mean, it's like, because people think hoof stock, and I've worked around a lot of hoof stock, that they don't have personalities. They're just like a dumb eating grass or leaves all day, ruminate, and that's all they do. But they're much more intelligent than that.
Much more intelligent, and again, they have adapted years, just like the predators. We always marvel at the predators, but they've adapted for years to be able to survive those predators, and survive and hide when appropriate, and flee when appropriate. And so that's what's incredible about them. I exactly agree. I think they are given, in general, hoofstock antelope, they're given a poor script by the public, because they're just not as charismatic and outgoing. But that's my message to you. That's my story to you, is that these animals are incredibly charismatic and incredibly outgoing. And again, I've had the good fortune of getting to know them and learn about them as individuals. And when that happens, they stick with you forever, and you will never look at them the same way. And they're just incredible. There were days when she wouldn't want to go out. She just wouldn't want to go out of the barn, and she would just find some other thing in her stall, in the barn, that she would think would be more important than going outside. And you could chalk that up to like, oh, well, she just did, she was dumb and didn't know what she was doing. She knew exactly what she was doing. She knew exactly how to stall to slow down the shifting to go outside at any moment that she wanted to. And again, as I talked about, she is a huge animal. I learned I couldn't hurt her if I wanted to. She'd just jump over my head. But that's where you learn to work with her. That's the value of operant conditioning, training, and again, that honestly helped with my relationship with her as well, and that helped me learn about her personality as well. Just an incredible animal. I worked with a male as well. He was incredible, and they are they're also striking species because they're known to be fairly docile, and they're huge, but they're fairly docile. But the males can be quite territorial, and they are big. The males are
almost 1,000 pounds.
Yeah, I was going to say. I think he was 600 pounds or something like that. So he was pretty big, and so they've got this huge rack, and they can use it when they want to. And normally they just kind of send messages, but if you go in with them and they're not in a good mood, they can put their hurt on you. So. They're an impressive species to just get lots of a great overall understanding of how magical animals really are. And I mean, I know it's an odd term to use for like, it's a scientific program and I'm a scientist and you're a scientist.
Yeah.
But they truly are just awe-inspiring. They just, when you, clearly I'm captured by them and I'm captivated by them. But when I look at them and when I get to interact with them, they just really, they stole my heart. And I value the time that I got to work with them, and I value the time that I now get to talk about them and spread the words about them. And just like every other species, like, why do they matter? Why should we care?
Yeah.
Because they are an incredible species that has existed for hundreds of thousands of years. We probably don't even know how long. And again, it took until the 1900s before they were discovered. And so you have the species that's done an amazing job of evolving, of existing, and of hiding. And why are we the ones to say that they shouldn't be in existence anymore? And why should our actions move them to a spot where they aren't in existence, or they are threatened, or they are endangered? And we should care about them because they do incredible things, and they are incredible animals. And there's, and here's the fun part, and this is what I also love about learning about animals, is sometimes you don't know the specific niche and role that they may have.
Yeah.
And you may not. And you may not until they're gone. We're learning more and more about this, about rainforest species that are being wiped out, and learning about medicinal purposes and medicinal, seed dispersal and propagation of plants and all this stuff, the integrated web that is our ecosystems. And for me, that's the point. It's like a game of Jenga, right? You pull enough pieces out, your tower can still stay. But if you pull the wrong one out, everything topples. And how do we know if Bongo end, that's not the last piece to topple? But again, I really appreciate getting an opportunity to talk to them, talk about them. I appreciate it.
I was going to say it's good because we did, before you came on, I told Angie we really don't know how the Bongo affects the ecosystem. Obviously, as a large herbivore, they have some impact. But when you were talking about that, a couple weeks ago, we released the interview with Dr. Enric Sala from National Geographic, and he talked about, you're right. I just go back to that interview. It's another example. Like we always talk about the wolves in Yellowstone.
Yep.
He was talking about the studies that showed when we took out sea otters, that meant sea urchins just proliferated like crazy and took out all the kelp forests.
Yep.
So you're right. You take out the Bongo, That's a major species. That's not a little tiny. I mean, even the tiny species have big impacts,
Right.
but that's a
It's
major species.
a huge, and again, if nothing else, it provides food for carnivores. I mean, there are lots of different things that can happen, and we just don't know, and we have to value all of them. I mean, you can't say this one's more important than this one. And again, I know that's Pollyanna of me to save them all. But we have to save, we have to keep entire ecosystems intact if we want to make this stuff happen, And so the conservation organizations out there, yes, that the ones that are dealing with specific species, they're great because they do shine a light on that. But there are also organizations that are looking at entire ecosystems and the importance of all of them, and how do we support those organizations as well. And that's what I'm looking for from I mean, you two keep it alive every day, but that's what I'm looking for from the listeners is, how do you help? And again, I know we're all trying to get through our daily lives. I know we're all trying to just do what we can to keep stuff together, but just take little steps every day to try to keep these ecosystems alive well and proliferating, and you'll get to help save these incredible animals. You'll get to help save Bongos in the wild, the wild cousins of Ariel and Bingo that I worked with. Bingo Bongo.
Yeah, you did. That's how we opened it. Bingo Banga Bongo in the Congo.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, you anything else to add about them or?
No, I'm good. But I just, again, I want to thank you guys for always letting me crash your party. You guys always have so much fun together, so it's always good to get in here and contribute where I can, where I have the ability to contribute. But thanks again for everything you guys do, and thanks to listeners for listening and helping to support.
No, John, it's always fun to have you on. It's always a treat, especially with your personal experience. So thank you. So we know pandas are 1, bongos number 2. Good. For all your students out there, they got to go back to the panda episode to learn about that one. But final question though, I have to ask this. Somebody told me to ask you. I don't know. She might live in your house. I mean, I guess there's 3 boys, a man and 2 boys. The one female, in your house.
It was the dog or one of the cats.
Yeah. Ask me, why aren't you getting bongos at your zoo? So she can go and help and watch them.
It's so true, and so a lot of it relates back to that fun story that I told you about jumping 6 feet from a standing position. Is that's just standing. Imagine if they got a running start, so that I have to contemplate, how large of an enclosure do I have to have? How tall of an enclosure do I have to have? The other thing is, it's actually a really great question. We have to consider our brand new zookeepers, and as docile as these guys do seem, when they have bad days, again, that much poundage can put a hurt on you. And so I would want them to be shifted. I would want them to go into a barn and go out of a barn. And we just don't have that facility right now. And the last thing, of course, we always got to think about the environment. And here, the temperatures are a little bit high for them. So they are forest-dwelling antelope, nice 75 degree, 60 degree all the time. They thrive really well in that. Once it gets up into the 80s and 90s, they don't do so
Central
well.
Florida.
Yep,
Yeah,
Central Florida. So
it's hot.
So as much again, I've already proclaimed my love for them. So that's not what's keeping them back. But we always got to make good decisions based on lots of different criterion factors. But
animal.
They're always in the back of my mind, and they're always in my heart. So.
All right. Well, I'll pass the message on.
I'm glad somebody will. Thanks, Chris. I appreciate it.
Thanks, John. Take care.
All right. See ya.
Sorry, you're not getting bongos.
You're a dream crusher too.
I know. I said I'd pass the message on to the little bird that asked me to ask that question. So he's like, it's too hot, and we don't have the facilities. So
I know they can jump; they're jumpers. But
I know.
Still, I just want to lay with one or next to one. Oh, John wants to do a vocalization off. I don't even know what they sound like, so you'd win. If it's whoever can be quieter, then I think you would win.
John wins. John wins. John wins that one.
Yeah, enjoy it. It's few and far between, buddy.
All right. So, Angie, With John on, I'm going to make this quick. We've talked about the Congo, Central Africa, some of the issues there. I still think, if you haven't heard Dr. Daniela Chuseed, Forest Elephants, episode 158, fascinating interview.
Oh yeah, it's so good. It's and Chris, I was just looking at it the other day, and actually, that interview is one of our top 10 most downloaded episodes so far ever.
Ooh, nice.
Yeah,
nice. I love it. It was such
so
an amazing
good
interview. And then episode 155, bonobos. I also talked about the Congo there, the mandrills last week. Again, we're in like Central Africa lately, but going to Kenya, the mountain bongo, like we talked about, critically endangered, low population, 140 total in the wild, if that, less than 80 adults, 5 separate subpopulations. This is in Mount Kenya, the Masai Mara Forest Complex, the Mau Forest, Aberdare Mountains. So that's where they're at. So, and they're declining. I mean, because of same things, in almost every species: illegal hunting, bushmeat trade, logging, diseases, loss of habitat. I do want to shine a bright light to a project in Florida where Conservation Center, one that we've talked about before, White Oak, they're one of the leaders in the world that are preserving critically endangered species. They have had a big baby boom in the last couple of years. So it's called the Baby Bongo Baby Boom. So say that fast.
No, thank you.
yeah, I know. So, we actually did work with them before we even started the podcast, and just one of our favorite places on earth. And they're working hard. There are people behind the scenes. And I know one of the organization you're going to talk about today, we'll save it for the end. They're fighting hard. So, with John coming on, talking about not only how awesome these animals are, how important they are ecologically, there are people out there fighting for them. So that leads me to my 30-second evolution talk. Now, I'm going to make it quick. So this isn't super long. Yeah, it's pretty similar across bovids. We've done this in a bunch of episodes. 20 million years, bovids have been around. First coming out in Eurasia and Africa is little small antelope, not anything like the bongo. And the first one was actually a tragus. It was about the size of a Thompson's gazelle.
Mm-hmm.
So looking specifically at bongo, like John said, he even said these animals have been around for hundreds of thousands of years. Absolutely. We don't know their evolutionary history, similar to mandrill a couple weeks ago, because they are these forest-dwelling animals and we don't have a lot of fossils. But we can trace their oldest relative back about 4 million years ago. Okay. So, they've been around quite a while. These animals aren't new to the scene. Now, classification tells us a little bit more. So the family's Bovidae. Subfamily is Bovinae, which the bovini is our bison, buffalo, those types, the cows, the cattle. And the other genus is Tragelaphus.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Good job. Yes.
So these ones are fun. This is one of Angie's, got to be one of your favorite genre of animals. So not only the bongo, you have in this genre, the greater kudu,
yes,
the lesser kudu,
yes,
yeah, the bush buck,
mm-hmm,
the nyala,
yes.
Have you heard that one? Okay. The
mm-hmm.
Sitatunga.
Okay.
I'm saying these right.
Mm-hmm. You
the
are.
cool,
I think so.
Yeah, and the
what was the last one?
The cool.
Yeah, Kewe or something like that.
Yeah.
I haven't seen those, but
okay. And then the mountain nyala.
Mm-hmm.
So okay, now the bongo's closest relative is the Sitatunga, and then but I mean, still they're all the same genre, so they all have a common
bush buck.
ancestor.
I've been blessed enough to see a lot of those. In fact, I have fond memories with John and Allison sitting in North Luangwa in Zambia, a park that wasn't even open to people at the time, but of course Allison with her amazing behind the scenes rhino translocation, she got us in there. And yeah, we would just sit and have coffee on our little porch of the little hut we were staying in and just watch the bush buck. And they're really cute because they actually are grayish, brownish in color, but they have a white circle around their butt.
Oh yeah.
So it's just, I don't know, they're just pretty charming.
Such amazing memories.
Yeah, they have a charming hind end, and so you just always just giggle at them because they look so. From the front end, they're like all business, but in the back, it's like a party. So, anyways, but that makes sense.
Right.
So that makes sense that they're related to bongos because bongos are pretty cool too.
Right, and then Angie, the species name is Tragelaphus urceus. Okay, and then, like you said, there's two species that we opened up with. So the western or lowland bongo is Tragelaphus urceus, and then the mountain or the eastern bongo is Traphylacis urceus isaaci. I think it's Isaac has named it somebody named Isaac. So Isaaci is how it was spelled.
And Chris, I think it's important to note we've highlighted about the eastern or mountain bongo that it is critically endangered with very few individuals left in the wild. But I think it's really important too to make note of the fact that the western or the lowland bongo, they're not out of the woods. Pardon the pun. Sorry, I couldn't. They're near threatened. So, and that's based on the most recent count, which was a little while ago. So, with everything happening in those regions, if they're near threatened, I don't think their populations are booming up to least concern. Right. So we need to keep an eye on both of these species.
Absolutely. You know, like we talked about, just as a large herbivore that's very important. Now, Angie, we've talked a lot about horns before, obviously, in all the podcasts.
So there's more to talk about then, right?
No, I found some obscure. I was looking up like horn species, and we've done the biggest horns, and you know, we've done all that. So I just found something unique. And it's called the horned crocodile. This thing's just bizarre.
Cute. So, I've heard of a horned frog before, but not a crocodile.
Yes. We're gonna do the horned frog. Is that the one with the that squeezes the blood out of its eye? I remember one of the kids.
That's the lizard, the lizard, North American horned lizard. Yes,
there you go. Okay.
Their self-defense mechanism is squirting blood out of their eyes. And I learned this from my 10-year-old buddy Eli when I was. This past summer when I was covering kids and interviewing them.
Yeah, during lockdown, it was amazing. So anyways, the horned crocodile, I love talking about these obscure species that are extinct. Lived in Africa 2 million years ago. Ate early humans. Homo sapien wasn't around then, but our earlier ancestors. So, poor things. 16 foot plus, but they had these two very prominent horns over their ears. So the bigger the croc, the bigger the horns. It was just crazy. I thought, a horned crocodile. So I thought I had to talk about it. In an herbivore episode, I had to bring in a horned crocodile. So
I love it. Well, and I mean, I could obviously go on and on about these horns because they are beautiful being in that genre with the elands and the kudus and the bushbuck. And they just have this spiral nature to them. And if you're just tuning in, you haven't heard us talk about antlers. I think I did a whole podcast just on antlers physiology.
Reindeer episode, yes.
Oh, so fun, the glory days. But keep in mind too that when the difference between horns and antlers is if you have a horn, like that crocodile or whatever, or these antelope species, you have them for life. And so they don't regrow. If you break them off, I once worked with a sable, Georgie Porgy Puddin' Pie. Her antlers were broken and they didn't grow back. She had two little stubbies that stuck out. Luckily, she broke them before, like the blood barrier, the blood supply. Otherwise, it would have been real ugly and they don't survive that. But antlers, this time of year, as we're coming into fall, male deers are going to start shedding their velvet, and that's the case that the antlers grow in. It's called velvet, but it's like skin with a little bit of fur on it, and that helps nourish the bone, the antler bone that is growing, and then they basically rub their antlers. The males, female deer don't have antlers unless they're reindeer, since you gotta listen to the podcast for that because they're unique about that. Yep. But yeah, they rub off the skin, this velvet and exposed bone, and then they fight the male, and then they will drop their antlers not too long after they score a female and breed her. And so it's crazy. I mean, anybody who's ever been to an old lodge before or something like that with hunters that put the big antlers up or whatever, can see how big those racks are. If you think of like a moose or something like that. And then, yeah, those deer species regrow them every year, which is why I spent half of an episode talking about how they do that, because it's so in nature, it's such a phenomenon to have that second, it's called a secondary sexual characteristic, because they need them, but they don't need them type to reproduce. They help antlers help fight off other males to win the female over, but they're not actually part of the reproduction process. And it's just a phenomenon in nature that these poor deer go to such extreme to grow these things every year, these huge racks.
I know.
Where the antelope species, like here in the United States, we have the pronghorn. That's another one we really need to cover those guys. Talk about jumping. Woo-wee.
I know.
And speed. They're really fast too. Yeah.
They're like the second or third fastest land mammal, right?
Yeah. Let's put that on the list. I just thought about that. But anyways, these antelopes, these bongos, these kudos, things like that, bushbuck, they have their horns for life, and they grow them. And the horn though is a little bit different than how I was talking about antlers. The bongo horn is hollow on the outer layer, and that area is made up of keratin. So that's the same thing with rhino horn is made out of, or your fingers,
fingernails,
toenails, your hair, things like that. And then once again, too, the females are going to have a little bit more shorter, thinner, and a little bit straighter. They don't have as much curve and twist or spiral to their horn as the male's going to have. But they're just beautiful. They're beautiful, and both males and females will use them when they need to. But in general, they're just fun to look at. That's for sure.
Oh, yeah. They're amazing. I mean, they're amazing. And, just some other quick factoids, because I'm glad you covered that, because I was going to definitely ask you to once again explain horns versus antlers.
And if you ask my 4-year-old, he knows the difference.
Of course he does. Next podcast we do it, we'll have him come on and explain
we'll quiz Zach.
That'll be fun. Yeah. So bongos live, 20, 22 years on average. So that's pretty standard for hoof stock. They can't be preyed upon by
unless you're my horse Rosie. If you're my horse Rosie, she's still rocking it out at 35.
Yep. And we covered I remember Przewalski horse when I covered that. The oldest living horse was like 53.
Yeah.
You were just like, what?
Wow. That's wow. I don't know if she'll make it that long, but she's enjoying her Florida retirement, that's for sure.
Yeah, no, 35 is it's great for a horse. So predators, hyenas, leopards, lions, things that eat them. And then bongos in turn eat and prey upon plants. So they eat leaves,
They're gentle giants. That's why I want one. Yes.
Fruits, flowers, bark, grass, cereal grains, whatever they can get is what they.
I'm such a dork, Chris, and I've obviously spent so much time around hoofstock that I just heard them when you visualize them like eating flowers and like munching on it, and I could hear that really zen crunching, that circular munching, crunching. That's like my happy spot. Yeah. So funny.
Yeah. Oh, just in the forest it would be amazing to see them. Some interesting factoids too is bongos will eat burnt wood because they need minerals.
Interesting.
So they're always looking for salt sources, mineral licks, because they need it, that they don't get it from their diets. It's amazing, Angie. They have so many similarities to okapi. So they have like that crazy prehensile tongue.
Yeah, that helps them reach the different grasses and leaves or flowers, like you mentioned. So I think that probably evolved in the forest, right? You need to be able to reach high and low, not just graze on the ground, but grab those leaves, right? Similar to giraffes, got to reach up high and grab leaves. And when you're in a forest situation, that comes in really handy, right?
Yeah. No, I get to see giraffes doing it. You're right. In okapi, after feeding them before. So, like we said, these are secretive animals, and you let into it with behavior. There's just not a lot known, right?
No, there's not as much as a gazelle or other species that we may, or sable antelope, maybe other species that we've covered. But what we do know is that during the day, they're going to typically be concealed in the forest. So they're not trying to come out and graze then, which is when most scientific researchers or behavioralists are doing their studies. So they're not out at that time. But when they do come out is at nighttime. And that's when they're going to try to find those natural salt licks and, of course, graze on grasses and herbs and leaves and whatever they can find. And there are reports of them coming out a little bit during the day, maybe at dusk and dawn, depending on how their foraging was going in the evening. And so some behaviorists will classify them as having crepuscular behavior, which is the dusk and dawn, but mostly nocturnal, and probably depends on what region they live in. They are shy, which is similar to okapi, right? So whenever I talk about hooves and horns, it's so different than working with horses, because horses are your typical flight animal. You scare them and they want to run in the other direction. And it was just such a unique experience working at the zoo and working with, like, let's say, sable antelope or Arabian oryx, which are much, much smaller, goat size, if you will. But they have horns, and if they were scared, instead of turning tail and going the other way, they actually came at you or at whatever was scaring them. It's called fear aggression. So when they feel threatened, because they have those awesome horns, which horses don't have, they know how to use them, and they will use them. And so with bongos, what it sounds like from what I'm understanding, with what I'm reading and talking with keepers, is they're a little bit more on the timid side, on the shy side. Usually if they are scared, they're going to go the other direction, usually quickly. And at least this is in the wild. Under human care, I think it's probably somewhat similar, unless it's a male in rut or during breeding season or something like that. The little that the researchers know is that they do like to be in herds, that's pretty similar to almost any antelope. But they're seldom in large groups. You're not going to see hundreds of them. Well, shoot, for the eastern or mountain, there barely are hundreds of them. But the herd sizes are going to range usually from like 5 to maybe 50 individuals, just depending on where they live and what time of year it is. And males in general are solitary, but they also, once again, depending on the species and where they live, or the time of year, of course, the seasonality of it, they'll sometimes be present in the herd. So I don't think that we exactly know all of their patterns and movements like we would for some of the other hoofstock species. But a lot of my understanding is that they do have complex social interactions, even though they live in these dense forests of Africa. And anybody that's worked with hoofstock in general, antelopes, deer, horses, things like that, rhinos, I mean, they have a lot of social interactions. They can talk to each other without using vocalizations. They can use their body and just
the mom look. Didn't we talk about that? The mom look.
Yes, they can do. They can do some serious mom looks, or some serious just move an ear one way or pick up a hoof another way, and that tells the other creature what they're thinking. And so they think that these networks or these herds they do live in probably have a lot more complexity to it than just what we know so far. And so although John says they don't make a vocalization, I think that's in general, they communicate more either tactile through touching one another or through visual, like pinning the ears back or raising a foot or something. But they can emit something called a bleat, which I guess I think of a sheep when I think of a bleat. But it's mostly grunts and snorts. Females might have a little low moaning or mooing contact when caring for their young, which makes me fall in love with them even more. I'm a big cooer at my kids when they're little. And my pets, oh my gosh. So that's just super endearing to me. They just keep getting more charming.
I mean, I imagine you're right. Like a lot of some of the stuff we've seen having them under human care, it's got to see some of those interactions in the wild would just be like, oh my goodness, it would be amazing to see it. So maybe one day we'll have to have Dr. Shoeseed back, when she's out there, we're looking at forest elephants and talk about all the other species that she gets to witness, with the gorillas coming by and some of the other stuff she mentioned in that interview. So as far as repro, I mean, I still think of okapi as amazing. So now you have another species in the Congo. finding them? How long's gestation? It's generation intervals, stuff like that. What are we looking at with the bongo?
Well, Chris, what first struck me is their similarity to cows and maybe a little bit different from some of the smaller antelope species. Just to skip forward, their gestation period is 9.5 months, which is a long time. It's what humans are 8.5 to 9 months. So it really is a good time and a good amount of prepartum, I guess, maternal nutrition suck, right? Like they've got to carry this calf for a long time, and they usually only give birth to one because of the large size. And I don't know if any twins have been reported. And just like any hoof stock or cows or horses, the calves, they come out not that big, anywhere from 50 to 90 pounds, depending on the female and all this and that, but they grow rapidly. So they nurse a lot and they start eating grass pretty soon thereafter. And their cute little horn buds start growing at about 3.5 months. So they are not born with horns, which the mothers are very grateful of. Trust me.
Yeah.
It's always, I'm more familiar with horses, so I can only speak on horses, but horses foals are born with hooves, of course, because they need them because they run really quickly. And I'm sure all hoof stock is like that. But at least I know on horses, they've figured it out. So they actually have like a cap, like a gelatinous cap over their hoof when they're born, which is probably very helpful to mom, passing 4 of those through the birth canal. Yeah. And so then that kind of gelatinous tissue or whatever it is falls off, dries up and falls off shortly after birth, which I always think is so... So it's such a genius plan.
Just to jump in here, the dork that we are, 3Pro, they should lead with their 2 front hooves, with their nose in between both of them. So
right. So imagine that coming down the pipes if there was hooves involved. If they weren't covered in the gelatinous, there's probably a scientific name for it. I'm forgetting all that information. But so I would imagine, of course, with bongos, it's somewhat similar because they have hooves, and so. But they don't have horns, and those start growing a little bit later. And of course, the young are going to be with the maternal group, with the females, and hang out with them for a while, basically until they reach sexual maturity after a couple years, and they are ready to then go off. The females will stay with their moms typically, and that herd that they're born into, but the males will, of course, go off, and basically the males tend to avoid each other once again unless it's breeding season. But from what we can tell is that they're not really fighters. They're just a timid, shy, sweet little creature. Even when the males bump into each other, they're kind of like, oh, we'll spar a little bit with our horns, but okay. It's more ritualized than like a serious fight. Where if you've gone on YouTube and you've seen 2 male deer during rut go at it, they are serious about it. That's what we call a fight. But the bongo, it's more of a kind of like, okay, well, you can have her. No, you take her. Okay, whatever. It's not. It's there's a lot more visual displays going on. Probably snorting, bulging their necks, rolling their eyes, things like that. Instead of actually, they don't really want to fight, basically. And the males are, like I said, they're usually just going to hang out until it's time to then meet another female. And Chris, more to my point about how they're just one of the most amazing antelopes that I've never met, that I want to meet and hang out with, that the males, when it is breeding time and they're full of testosterone in this rut, they're still like gentle. They're gentle, giant lovers, if you will. And what I mean by that is the males typically don't have to like coerce or restrict or do anything aggressive with the females in order to breed them. Whereas other antelope species, the males can sometimes be a little bit rough with the females. And so once again, they're just gentle giants. They're my kind of guys. I want a bongo. I know I will never have one, nor should I. I need to just go to Africa and see them and help conserve them in the wild. Well, Chris, it's funny as I'm like thinking about this and talking about the males and how they're like really nice with the females. And if the females don't want to breed, they don't like box them in. They're just like,
Mhm,
okay,
mhm, mhm.
do your own thing, sweetie, whatever. It's totally John and I's relationship. He's
Yeah.
always said, like, he's like, Angie, like, I know that I could never like win you by like boxing you in. Like, I can never like put you in a box. He's like, my only goal in life is just to like kind of help corral you or like herd you from not doing tons of crazy stuff. But I
Yeah,
can't,
yeah,
you know,
yeah,
he'll
yeah.
never put me in a box. He lets me do my own wild things and go to Africa by myself and just be me, which is why he's so amazing. But I'm like, wow,
Mhm, mhm.
that's why I love him. He's like a bongo, you know?
He doesn't box you in.
Yeah, he
So
doesn't
John's a bongo.
he's a gentle
No wonder why he
guy.
loves him so much.
I
It's a spirit
know.
animal.
That's
John's
right.
spirit animal is the
Totally.
bongo.
Totally.
So we'll dedicate this episode to John.
Yes.
For sure.
And Ariel, that's his first love. And I'm
Ariel, yeah.
okay with that. That's fine.
Yeah, he said it would be a tough pick between you and him.
And I respect him. I love him more for being honest.
All right, before we get to the organization, which is an amazing one you got covered, real quick, conservation tip of the week. Again, I've mentioned this, I think, with mountain gorillas, but put this in your head. Recycle your cell phones, okay? Everybody needs to recycle their cell phones because one of the primary minerals extracted in the Congo is coltan. And it's heavily mined there. It's one of the only sources on Earth of coltan. So it is having an impact on wildlife there, which would include the bongo. So, you know, the other thing is, and especially with, you know, COVID and everything that's going on around the world, do you really need to upgrade that cell phone every year?
No.
Do you?
No.
No.
And they just
you
don't.
don't.
Getting bigger. Like it's like you're
and more expensive.
Yeah,
They're
you're just like you're talking on this huge. I saw a new ad for one that's it's the two screens. It basically folds in half, and then
folds,
unfolds into basically like a laptop.
Yeah, no.
I don't want to talk on a laptop on the phone.
No, the upgrades are very minimal. I mean, the cameras are getting better. I give you that, but you really don't need to upgrade year after year after year. But you know, it's just recycle your cell phones. You can go and wipe your data. You know, remove all that stuff, and that way we're reusing the coltan and all the electronics in there. But Angie, organization of the week, who we got?
So yeah, Chris, this week we're going to highlight the Bongo Surveillance Project, which is awesome. Not only is it talking about antelope conservation, which is awesome because it's not only talking about antelope conservation in Africa, it specifically works to protect bongos. And so we'll put it up on our show notes, but they have a brilliant Facebook page at Bongo Surveillance Project. Otherwise, on the internet, you can find them at www.mountainbongo.org. And the objective of the Bongo Surveillance Project is to protect and conserve the critically endangered eastern or mountain bongo and its habitat. And they do this by working with the local communities nearby and having worldwide stakeholders. So having a lot of input from different organizations. And this organization has been around for a while, and it's recognized for its unique ability to go out into the field and basically transform these different local communities through education and conservation and all sorts of projects. And its base is in Kenya, which is, of course, the habitat that they reside in, the ones that are left, the mountain bongos, and was founded in 2004. So it's been around for a while. And the founder's name is Mike Preteljohn. And he basically has a lifetime working in the forests of Kenya and has obviously a love for bongos and wanting to save them after realizing that, well, they're becoming critically endangered. And just like any project or nonprofit, in order for it to grow, you need partners. And the Bongo Surveillance Project has been recognized locally, internationally. It's been supported by WAZA, which is the World Association for Zoos and Aquariums. And they just have tons of different supporters, the IUCN, a lot of groups in Kenya, a lot of other international groups as well, Rare Species Conservation Foundation, Tusk Trust, that's hard to say. But of course, that's the one that helps protect elephants. So a lot of partners fighting for these guys and trying to keep them in their natural habitat in Kenya and keep the numbers growing by educating people and by protecting the habitat that they're found in.
That's amazing. It's good work. Again, another species we cover, and there's people out there fighting for it. So amazing job.
I know, it made me so happy. I was like, nobody cares about the bongo. I was like, no. And then I'm like, oh, yes.
They do.
John and I aren't the only ones.
I know.
Yay.
All right. Amazing podcast, Angie. I know we have a lot of good stuff coming. A lot of good stuff. We've got a good episode coming up with our friend Corbin, and we've got some special interviews in the works. And next month is going to be spooky animals. We've got some good lineup for October.
Yeah, it should be fun. And as always, we appreciate any emails or Facebook likes. We also have an All Creatures Facebook group where lots of discussions go on and a lot of good articles are shared. And so it really helps keep you on your toes with what's happening with conservation. And so we always want to hear from you. So reach out if you have a favorite species that you want us to cover, or a suggestion of an organization that you'd like to have us interview on the podcast. It's in order for us to save these animals, it's going to take our whole village. You guys are conservation heroes just by listening and sharing and loving and learning. And so we appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, take care.
Listen, learn, share. Join the movement at allcreaturespod.com.